Hey guys, and welcome to October's House, the place where we talk all TV, cinema, and horror. Today we're going to be talking about the future of the Saw franchise. I absolutely adore these movies. The first one is arguably one of the best horrors ever made, and it's most definitely one of the best horrors of the 2000s. But if you've kind of been following the franchise, you will have known that for a long time Saw 11 was kind of hanging in the balance after the release of Saw 10. Dates kept getting pushed back, reports started coming in of infighting, and rumours started to bubble up that it was just getting cancelled. And then all of a sudden Lionsgate took it off their schedule completely with no statement of or official kind of cancellation. And shortly after that, reports started coming in that they were selling the franchise to another studio, and it was between two studios. One was A24 and one was Blumhouse. When I first heard about this, I was not feeling it at all. I thought if it went to A24, they would try and make it too artsy, try and go in an elevated horror direction I don't think would work for Saw. And with Blumhouse, their releases are so hit or miss that I just did not trust them with it. And now we finally have had confirmation that Saw is in fact being given to Blumhouse. Honestly, this worried me at the start, and while I do still have mixed feelings, I've sat on it and I feel less bad about it. With James Wan's Atomic Monster merging with Blumhouse, it kind of actually makes a lot of sense for Saw to be there. I didn't really think of that at first. It's difficult with Blumhouse because they are home to some amazing films like Insidious and Sinister, but it's also home to some really bad films and some of the worst releases that we've got in the past decade, like Night Swim and Imaginary. It's honestly a bit of a gamble every time I sit down to watch one of their movies. Just to be clear and exact on what's actually happening, Lionsgate are still in the picture. It's just Twisted Pictures have sold their 50% to Blumhouse. According to James Wan himself, this does actually mean that he will be back and involved alongside Lee Whannell with this new entry. The exact quote from Bloody Disgusting is, "Saw holds a special place in my heart. Coming back to this world with a fresh perspective is thrilling and deeply personal. For me, this will mark a significant creative return to the franchise for the first time since the early days, and I'm much looking forward to embracing the original spirit whilst pushing the legacy forward in bold and unexpected ways." It's awesome that he's back. I'm so excited, and he sounds really excited to be back. Back in what capacity is a different question, but I do have to ask, what does this quote mean? Embracing the original spirit whilst pushing the legacy of the franchise forward is a really interesting quote, and I'm still not 100% sure. I'm not even sure that he's 100% sure what that means yet, but I think today it would be really fun to just go through 5 different possibilities and directions that they could take the franchise in going forward after 10 entries and possibly a little bit of a hiatus. So the first option is that they could continue on like nothing has happened. This could happen, but I don't think it's likely. Especially when we consider the quote that we just read, it does sound like they're going to be pushing for something new with the franchise. But if they were to go in this direction, there were plenty of theories after 10 about what was going to happen in 11, and a lot of them I do think made a lot of sense. I think the main one was that it would take place somewhere around Saw 3 and follow Hoffman's story and give us a bit more detail on that. And then towards the end of Saw 11, and maybe in the third act, there would be a time jump to Saw 7, like the end of Saw 7, we would find out that Hoffman was alive, and then Saw 12 and onwards would carry on the kind of timeline from Saw 7 onwards. I absolutely love that theory, and I would have loved to seen it play out. I think at the time of Saw 10's release, this was very, very likely. However, with the handover, this is probably the least likely out of all the options. Secondly, they do a soft reboot similar to Spiral. I'm personally of the opinion that Spiral isn't that bad of a movie. I just don't think it was good at being a Saw movie. And I will always associate it with the Muppet voice that they do for some reason.
Hello, Detective Boswick.
The idea of a copycat killer was floating around the fandom for so long. And, you know, it was actually a really cool direction that they took it in. And it was also explored a little bit in the main series anyway. But if they were to go in this direction again, that is to say, do like a side story with a different set of characters and new motives, but still with like a little bit of connection to the main story, they would have to make sure that it still felt like a Saw movie. But a soft reboot with the lore of the 10 entries before it, a new set of characters, a new setting, and a new jumping off point in terms of story, I think could absolutely work. And I do think that it is quite likely. They would just need to make sure that it felt like Saw, because if they don't, then they may as well just do a full reboot. Which leads me on to my next point. They do a full reboot with a brand new lore. This one is super interesting, but slightly worrying because so many things could go wrong with it. I actually came across this post on Reddit with a tweet from Lee Whannell basically saying he wasn't a fan of the later entries of the franchise. So a complete reset with a brand new set of characters, a brand new cast, does seem fairly likely. But if they were to do this, we have to ask, what couldn't they do realistically that the franchise hasn't done before? Because if they're starting with a fresh slate, they have to make sure that it's different and it's new and it's fun and it's exciting. I think honestly we could get a younger Jigsaw, and I think a younger cast in general, to be honest. I think that they would leave the early 2000s industrial vibes completely, and I think that it would be a lot more contemporary. I think I'm finding it hard to visualize it, but if I had to kind of compare it to something, I think I'm kind of seeing it as something similar to The Platform, and something with a bit more of a statement. Obviously the original 10 are all about appreciating life, and there is a lot of like kind of subtleties and like meanings behind things. But I think that they could go a lot more overtly political. Saw 5 and 6 did kind of lean into that a lot more, especially 6 with the healthcare. But I think that they could go harder from a clean slate, and I think that that would be quite a contemporary thing to do. So the next option is that they do a full remake. So that would be the same characters, same setting, same story, same themes, with a different cast, you know, built up from the ground again. I think that this would be really interesting to see. Don't think it's going to happen. It doesn't really seem on the cards because remakes are kind of just out of fashion at the moment. I really don't see this happening, but just for fun, I have put a little fan cast together for a remake full of contemporary horror icons. This is kind of really stupid and it's kind of making me laugh just looking at it, but written down here I've got Zepp, David Dastmalchian, Detective Tapp, Daniel Kaluuya, Amanda, I've got Mia Goth, Adam, I've got Richard Harmon, Dr. Gordon, Ethan Hawke, knowing Blumhouse, and John Kramer. Jigsaw would be Willem Dafoe. I feel like that's some interdimensional cable shit there. Like that, imagine walking into a cinema to watch Saw sitting down and that's your cast. That would be insane. Okay, so the next option is that they do a legacy sequel or a requel. I think this is more likely than a remake. Still not sold on whether this is actually going to be what they do. If we consider that remakes are out of fashion, then requels are definitely still in fashion. We've got I Know What You Did Last Summer coming out this year. So the way that they would do this is do like a plot similar to the first movie. Same themes, you know, same kind of beats. But with a brand new cast, a younger cast, because I do think that that's going to be definitely something. Whichever direction that they go through, I think the cast will be a lot younger. And it seems essentially like a reboot. That is until Shawnee Smith or Carrie Elwes comes back for a 10-minute cameo of exposition. I think that this format works really well for slashers. Scream especially, because obviously you can play into the meta of it. But for Saw, I don't see this working. You know, they could do something similar to Halloween where they kind of like erase all sequels and start from Saw 1 and do like, you know, a new Saw 2 essentially and take the story in a completely different direction. Or they could do more of a remake where it's still tied to the established lore. I can see neither of these things happening for Saw. I don't think it would work. And next to just carrying on like nothing's happened, this is probably my least likely direction. So that's 5 different options for what they could do with the next installment of Saw now that it's gone over to Blumhouse. Regardless of how involved James Wan and Leigh Whannell actually end up being, I do think that it's important to pay close attention to what they're saying. You know, kind of read between the lines a bit, because they're very indicative of what the future holds for this franchise. And considering a remake or a requel doesn't quite fit the franchise, and it doesn't seem likely that they're just going to carry on like nothing's happened, I do think a soft or a full reboot is the way that they are going to go. I'm leaning more towards putting my money on them doing a soft reboot. I think that that's probably the direction that they'll go, very similar to Spiral. I do think that they would have learned from their mistakes with Spiral and maybe refined the idea of doing a copycat almost spin-off. But I also don't think that we are going to get another Saw film until at the absolute very earliest, like late 2027. I think it's probably more like 2028 or 2029. So get comfortable, because I think that it's going to be a bit of a wait now until we hear any more news. And it'll definitely be a few years until we actually get anything. And it's going to be an interesting few years for Saw fans. So yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Let me know what you think is going to happen with the next installment of Saw. I would absolutely love to hear anyone else's theories or just ideas or thoughts. Also, I would love to hear any opinions on my fan cast, because I know it was immaculate. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for some more horror content, and I will see you in the next one.